Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel discussion this evening, Times of Change, How Transitions and Change Impact Recovery. I'm your Alumni Services Coordinator, Erin Birely, LCPC, and I use she, her pronouns. And in a moment, I will introduce you to our 4 alumni panelists for this evening. And right now, though, I want to give people a little bit of extra time and go over a few announcements with you all. So, to start, I want to remind everyone that our residential reunion, our virtual alumni reunion, is coming up on Saturday, June 1st. This is held online via Zoom from 10:30 a.m. until 3 p.m. And we will be working to empower recovery through connection. So, this is a great opportunity to come back, get a little bit of extra support, whether that be with staff from the residential sites that you've worked with before, or just having that connection with others who are in recovery. We also still have our free support group for residential alumni. The upcoming dates for that are Tuesday, May 21st and Tuesday, July 16th or June 18th, and then July 16th and August 20th. So we are really hoping to create more connection even outside of the reunion with our alums for this group. And then additionally, we have 2 more webinars in our spring series. So we've got one on Wednesday, May 8th, and one on Wednesday, June 5th. So on May 8th, we'll be speaking with Kristen, talking about reclaiming movement and finding that balance with exercise and recovery. And then we'll be talking on June 5th with Jenna about progress, not perfection, and really that idea of finding self-compassion as we work in our recovery. So I will now stop sharing. And I am excited to introduce you all to our panelists tonight. So we have 4 panelists who have gone through Renfrew at different times, at different places, and they are really excited to share their story with you all this evening. So we will get started with Breanna, who will be sharing a little bit about her story, and then we will hear from Emily, Gaby, and Lola as well. So Breanna, I will toss it over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Erin. Hi, I'm Breanna. Go by she, her pronouns. I live in Delaware with my fiance, 2 dogs, and 2 cats. I went to Renfrew in Maryland, so moving to Delaware has been a big transition for me because I didn't know anybody here except for my fiance. I make friends through our dogs, honestly. Um, they make friends, and then I learn the dog's name and then their people's name. So that works out really well. We enjoy kayaking and hiking. I love movies and concerts. Um, my eating disorder, just to talk a little bit about that, started when I was 13 and I got treatment at the age of 20. So it's been a little over a decade now since I've been in the process through treatment, and there have been ups and downs and a lot of transitions. And I'm really proud of where I am now. I'm currently an ABA therapist, and I work with children on the autism spectrum. So it's a really rewarding work for me. My dog is also going through orientation to become a therapy dog. So she's going to be helping children as well. And so I'm really excited about that. Try not to talk too much about my dog because I already have. But yeah, so I'm excited to, answer questions tonight. And that's all I have for my intro.
All right, thank you, Brianna, so much. Let's pass it over to Emily to speak a little bit next.
Hi, my name is Emily Melendez. I I'm a 24-year-old school teacher. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. But when I started my journey with Renfrew, I started in Baltimore. Um, so I began struggling with eating disorder symptoms at around the age of 13, which just was a time in my life where I was going through a lot of change. I had been changing schools, my body was changing, my family was changing, and And I think that, that theme of change actually was what brought on my eating disorder. Then when I was in high school, I decided to reach out and get help. I went to Renfrew um, when I was 17, and then um, I kept going back to Renfrew a few times because I just couldn't figure out how to navigate through recovery. Um, and it wasn't until recently, uh, probably about 2 years ago, where I really felt like I was finally in the recovery space, where um, I I actually took a little bit of time off of college and decided to just focus on being Emily, um, and finding who I was beyond my eating disorder and beyond being in college and having assignments due and grades. And for a while, I felt like I had lost myself to being a student and being a person with an eating disorder. Um, and no matter how many times I went back to treatment, I found myself being a student and a person with an eating disorder. And so I took time off of being a student, and that led to taking time off um, from being someone with an eating disorder, and hopefully, um, being forever without having my life ruled by an eating disorder. Um, then last year, I graduated from college and decided to move to South Carolina. I just applied for a job without telling anyone. Um, and I moved, and it was the best thing that I could have ever done because I took myself out of the space where I had previously been Emily with an eating disorder and Emily as a student. And I put myself into a new space where I was Emily as a girlfriend of a wonderful guy that I met, and Emily as a girl who loves going for hikes and putting her bare feet in the grass, and Emily as a teacher, and Emily as a babysitter and a tutor and an artist. And I became so much more than what I had been um, where I was before. And I think that really helped me find who I was in recovery. And um, once I found that I was strong enough and I had planted my roots firmly here in Charleston, um, then I decided that I wanted to use my story to help other people. So that's when I turned back to Renfrew and said, "How can I help other people find their peace like I did?"
And Emily, we are so glad you did, and so glad that you all are here with us tonight. So we will turn it over to Gaby now to share a little bit about her story.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gaby. My pronouns are she, her. I am 43 years old. I've been in recovery from my eating disorder since 2006. So it's coming up on 18 years or so. It's been a while. Um, I've had an eating disorder since like I was 13 or 14. So I lived with an eating disorder for most of my teens and throughout my 20s. And then when I found recovery, I had just gotten married and I was living in upstate New York. And through recovery came the discovery of myself again. I'd been, my true self had been silent and quieted and kind of dormant for so long that when I kind of came back, it really forced me to kind of recognize who I was in relationships, who I was in my career, who I was in life. And with kind of like finding recovery, I found the energy to kind of pursue all these dreams that I had kind of just like set aside. So since recovery, I moved to New York City, which was always a dream for me and a goal. And I've since gotten married again. I have a 10-year-old daughter. So as far as transitions, I've been through many, from moving and starting a whole new life to starting a family to transitioning through body changes, through pregnancy and through motherhood. And now I'm kind of, life is all about change and transition. So as I grow older, I know that I'm going to start to prepare for different changes with my body and age. And so I'm always very grateful to have the tools to kind of come back to and use often whenever things seem a little rocky. So I'm very grateful to Renfrew for that, of course, and I'm here for anybody.
Thank you, Gabby. And I love that piece of like transitions are always happening, change is always happening in life. And I think that's why this panel discussion is so important. And I apologize for not saying this earlier, but if you all have questions that you would like to ask our panelists or pieces that you would like to kind of bring up for us to discuss more, please put them in the chat as well. For now, though, I do want to hear from Lola before we go into a little bit more of a Q&A discussion. So thank you, Gabby.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lola. I use she, her pronouns. And I want to share a little bit about my story. If you want me guys to be honest, like I prepared like what I wanted to share, and I I had this pressure, like I really want to say something like perfect and like, but I want to let that go right now, and I just want to like talk as like if you guys were my friends, like I really want to like, if there's a message that I want to give right now is like I want to be authentic, and I want to like share how my experience was with Renfrew and how my story like started. I'm from Chile, and I moved here to the United States to pursue a PhD. I grew up, well, I born and raised in Chile, and my eating disorder symptoms started when I was like 17 or 16, so like in high school. I've always felt, at least from like the environment I grew up, this pressure of needing to be perfect. And I feel like maybe a lot of us like grew up with that pressure, and you need to be perfect in school, you need to be perfect, your body needs to be perfect, and all this pressure just led me to develop an eating disorder. And at least how it was for me, I was really suffering through like academic pressure. Like I really needed to like be good at school because that's what defined me as a person. And I left all my like mental health and like physical well-being behind because I needed to be a good student. And then just I feel like my coping mechanism was develop an eating disorder, and I never saw it as something like harmful. And I was like, no, you need to focus on school. Like there's an eating disorder developing. Don't think about that. Don't think about that. And that avoidance led me to live with that eating disorder for almost 10 years of my life. And that's when I got here. I moved here. I am here because I'm pursuing a PhD. I think that I didn't say it, but I live in Baltimore. I study at Johns Hopkins. That's where I came to do my PhD. And after my first semester here, this big change of moving to a new country. And whenever I thought about moving, I really wanted to like leave everything behind, everything that was like haunting me, which was my eating disorder, all the tense situations that I had at home. I just wanted to leave all behind, and my coping mechanism for doing that just like move. And I really thought that by moving I was gonna like leave all of that behind, but that wasn't the case. So that big change of moving here actually led me to a place in my life where like I finally was able to realize that I really needed professional help. And that first call that I did to Renfrew, like that was the first time that I really seek for professional help after almost 10 years with suffering of an eating disorder. And I don't regret that phone call ever at all. That's where my journey of recovery started. I went to Renfrew for most part of 2022. So now it's been like 2 years since I decided up with the path of recovery. And within these 2 years, there have been like so many more changes in my life. Changes in like my supports, changes in my body, changes in how my perspective of life really is right now. And I couldn't be more grateful of my experience at Renfrew, the supports that I started building because I started going to treatment. And it's just like when I got the option to like share my story here, like I didn't even think it twice. It was like, oh, of course I want to share my experience. Of course I want to like guide others in like situations of change, because like changes are always going to be happening, transitions are always going to be happening, and how do we work towards those changes to like not be harmful for us? And I feel like I can share a lot about that, because at least the experience was for me that actually those changes led me to make the great decision to seek for help. So that's just a little bit about me. I think that now that we're all done, I'm just gonna like let Erin continue the discussion.
Thank you, Lola. And thank you all for sharing about yourselves. If everyone wants to actually come back on camera, that would be great. God knows nobody wants to just listen to me talk this whole time. But I think one of the things I really heard kind of in what you all were sharing is the way relationships really were impacted by the eating disorder and recovery. And I would love to hear like how you all work to kind of handle those transitions in the relationships during treatment and recovery, and what that was like for you all. And being authentic, I've got a dog that's trying to get out right now, so I will be right back, guys. But if anyone wants to take that question to start us off.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with that one. So, Renfrew helped me actually come out of the closet, which I feel like I should have mentioned in my intro, but I mentioned it now. One of the most important things for me, and I hadn't really had a relationship before that because I was in the closet, so there weren't any like options to be public or anything. So that definitely was a one of the biggest transitions. And then I think from there, trying to find a healthy relationship was very difficult. So my first few relationships were not great. I know a lot of people can relate to that, but I think I just started a little late since I waited a while to come out, which is totally fine. But I definitely had to figure out that I deserved better, because I think that was a really hard thing when I was still engaging with the eating disorder symptoms, is that I didn't necessarily think that, I deserved better than what I had. And so once I really worked on a lot of those core beliefs, which are always a work in progress, I definitely was able to find someone and still, like, in that relationship, have conversations and communicate how, we can do better as a couple and move forward. And so it definitely was a struggle for a while, but my partner is very supportive in my recovery. But I also think it's important for me to know that I can do it by myself.
So kind of for you, it was having that, both the support and stability on your own. Like, I like having this support. It's helpful to have this support. And I know I'm not dependent on the support.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's also like, with my partner, she might be going through something, but I think I think everyone supports their partner, and it's kind of like never this 50-50 that you think it's going to be, or that I thought it was going to be. So yeah, I definitely, I think had to build up confidence through the years, to know that like I can also be a support for me. I don't have to find more people to be a support. But it's great. It is great to have, though. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. What was it like for Go, Emily.
I can kind of add to that. So, a little bit of background about me is that when I entered Renfrew, I was dating what I thought was going to be my high school sweetheart. I met this boy when I was in high school, and we were together for, I think, almost 7 years. And so I was very comfortable with this person, but I heavily relied on him for support, and he heavily relied on me for support. And so it took going through Renfrew a few times to realize that that we didn't have the same goals, And I think something that's very important is that you have the same goals as your partner or even anyone that you're friends with. And I was growing at a different rate than him, and it took a lot, but I eventually broke up with him. And that was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, but it was one of the best decisions and the healthiest decisions that I've ever had to make. Because once I realized that I was leaning on him to survive, um, I felt like I was only like part of a person without him. And once I broke up with him, I was able to build up myself independently and realize who I was and the goals that I had instead of the goals that he had or the goals that we had. And then after that relationship ended, I was able to find someone who shared the same goals as me, but it wasn't the me who the eating disorder was leading. It was the me who already knew herself and was sure of herself and knew what she wanted. And I think finding myself before finding a new relationship was one of the most healthy things that I could have done in recovery. And also just being upfront about my eating disorder. I remember telling him and being like, hey, I have this thing. It's okay if you don't want to be with me. And I just remember him being like, no, it's okay. I want to help you through that. But I want you to help yourself through that. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to recover for you or do it for me, babe, please. It was like, I want you to do this for yourself. And I think with relationships and recovery, that's what you need to look for is people that want to bring out the best in you and then people that share the same goals as you so that you're working parallel with each other. You're not leaning on each other for support.
I can share that the relationship that I was in while I was in the midst of my eating disorder was a very codependent relationship. It was an enabling relationship. I think he loved taking care of me because I was broken and weak and quiet and he loved taking care of me and I loved that he took care of me. And I think we just fed off each other. With recovery came a whole new person. I really discovered strength for one. And with that strength came empowerment and came determination and came an excitement about doing so many different things that all of a sudden I was taking off in a different lane. And my relationship with my partner at the time, he either had to catch up with me or he was going to fall behind. I think my recovery really kind of made it so clear how we were such different people. When I finally found myself, I was like, wow, I'm one thing and you were something very different. Not to say that one is better than the other at all, but it really highlighted that difference. And then I felt empowered to kind of move on and look for something that felt right to me, that fit the person that I was becoming and meeting. And even though it meant uprooting everything, it felt like the best risk to take because I had a certainty about myself that gave me just like a net, like a net that would save me. Like no matter what I was going to go through, I knew that I could come back to myself. And that was, I think, something that I take with me through all the change and all the transition is sort of knowing that like we come back to base, we love ourselves, we take care of ourselves, we love who we are. And if we can establish that inner strength, then we can kind of continue and come out of different difficult times because they come.
Yeah, that idea of being able to look at the relationship with ourselves and like, how is that relationship? And then when we get that in a place that feels right, feels in line with our values, feels in line with our goals, like recognizing how that shifts the other relationships, some of them meaning they end and some of them meaning, okay, we start to gather new. Lola, anything you wanted to add on that topic, or you feel like the other three covered it?
Honestly, I was reading another question in the chat that I think that I would like to answer to. So
Go for it.
do I have to like read it, or it's specifically I think it's Juliana's question about like, no. Someone asks about like going PhD. Oh, it's Emily. It's Emily. She said that she has a question because like she is, do you want to
I
read
can
it?
read it for you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it was hard for me to find it.
So kind of thinking about managing post-grad job search while also doing higher education. And we'll kind of generalize the question so others can speak to it also. Then trying to do treatment for an eating disorder at the same time and kind of managing what do I do with being back in old environments where maybe I used to act on my eating disorder, trying to fit in my treatment schedule, trying to find work just to be able to sustain myself and do all of these things. You know, you want to talk about a transition, the times you all are in treatment is a major transition time, least of all being the scheduling that has to happen for that. So thinking about like what do we do in those situations when it's this like really intense transition, and yes, we're working towards goals and it maybe feels harder working towards them.
Yeah, I just read that in the chat and I just instantly felt that I needed to like say something about it because I've been struggling with that too. Now that I'm like, I moved here for like doing my PhDs. This is what I always like wanted to do my whole life. I just worked and dreamt of like one day I'm just gonna be amazing in what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do a PhD in this high great university or whatever. And I really wanted that because I just thought that that was the only thing that was gonna like define me. And now that I'm here, I'm gonna like be transitioning to my fourth PhD year, like my fourth year. And it's just like so crazy to think about it. Like, wow, it's already been like I've been here for 3 years and I've been like questioning a lot myself, like, is this where I want to be or not? So that's why I wanted to like say something about the question that Emily wrote in the chat. So I feel like for me, how this like higher level of education feels like, and how do I like try to balance like my treatment with school for me. And it's funny, we were just like thinking about if PhD was like we were discussing that before we went live, because I just asked the question, is a PhD a job? It's a real job. And you know what, it is like you do a lot. And so again, I'm just feel like I'm just like mumbling, but I've asked myself the question, do I want to be here? Does this align with my values? And I feel like in Renfrew, we talk a lot about values. And one of the best things that I learned in Renfrew is like, okay, I feel like I want to make the decisions in my life, either if that's like the decision of what job am I going to do? Who am I going to keep close to me as supports? Who am I going to hang out with? Like all those decisions that we actively make every day, even this big and important decision of like, what am I going to do the rest of my life, which is like your job, what's going to be your job. At least for me, it has to align with my values. And I just like, after finishing my treatment at Renfrew, and I really thought about like, do I want this life, which I know that PhD and postdoc and that kind of life is so stressing because it requires so much from like, you need to be perfect. You're competing with your peers for a fellowship, you're competing with your peers for a grant, for like funding, you're competing all the time. And at least for me, I'm still enjoying the life that I'm having here as a PhD student, but I wouldn't like to do this for the rest of my life. And some people can manage that, and that's amazing if it works for them, but at least for me, it just doesn't work. So I feel like the question you need to ask yourself is like, okay, is this decision that I'm making for like my career path, like what am I going to do in the future? I don't know if for the rest of your life, because that's even hard to say to you, but that decision, any decision, whenever I need to make a decision, I just think about, is this life, the decision that I'm going to make, is it going to align with my values? Do I want to keep being the perfectionist girl that actually became one with an eating disorder? Perfectionism is like so related to eating disorders. So probably that's like what I like. I just want to leave you there with that question, Emily. Like, do you think that the decisions you're making are decisions that are aligning you with the values that you want to have in your life. And I think that based on that, that's going to help you to make a decision and feel less overwhelmed about the decision that you're making. Like, if is it the right decision or not? So I don't know if any other panelist wants to like add something to that.
Go ahead, Emily.
I can add to that. So I when I was going through the midst of my eating disorder, I was in college. And I actually took a whole year off of school. So one of the things, first of all, that I'm going to say is if you find yourself struggling when navigating life, and this is coming from a place of privilege where I did have the privilege to just take time off of college. And I know that not everyone has the privilege to take time off and use their resources. But fortunately, I was in a place where I could do this. But the first thing that you have to do is prioritize what is more important for me. Is my health more important? Is this job more important? Is school more important? At the time, I kept working, but I took off of school. So I still had to make money, but I did take time off of school. And during that time, just like Lola said, I reflected on a group that was actually my first ever group at Renfrew, which was the values group. And in order to decide where I was going to go next in life, I had to first know what my values were. So I was deciding, do I go right into grad school? Do I stay in Maryland, or do I move to South Carolina, 9 hours away, and meet all new people and take this risk? And what I decided was best for the values that I found myself having was to go and work with kids with dyslexia. And now every day my job adds, it strengthens my identity because I work in a workplace that not only shares the same values as me, but also encourages other people to have those values of education and friendship and community. And I think there was another question that kind of Avery asked, how did you manage finding strength in your own identities while handling and striving for recovery? I think just focusing on yourself for a little bit and discovering who you are will bring you recovery. I know it sounds way easier said than done, but just kind of looking at all of your choices laid out in front of you and deciding like which one fits my identity will bring you a life that fulfills your recovery more often. Like in the life that I was living before that was not aligned with my values, it was hard to fit in with my identity. My schedule didn't allow for me to go outside and spend time with bugs and animals. I was around people that didn't love art and didn't value education, and making a choice in my career path that aligns with my identity strengthened my identity in recovery, where now I can take my class outside. We're planting a garden and growing vegetables for our school. I'm teaching them love for their environment and connection with food. And so I think just, leaning into that, leaning into your values and passing it on to the next people, finding a job that aligns with that is something that will bring you fulfillment in your recovery.
Yeah, Gaby.
I would also love to add, for me personally, it was a really big moment when I realized that my eating disorder, who had claimed to be my best friend for so long, right? It was my ride or die. I'll be there in the good times, I'll be there in the bad times. I will get you to the better times, because it was this deceiving offer, right? Like, stick with me and I'll get you wherever you need to go. And then the day that I almost was like separated myself, and I was like, you are ruining my life. You are not getting me to the best places. As a matter of fact, you're disconnecting me from everything that I am. And being able to kind of stand up and be like, no, this is the moment when I'm going to put me first, right? My recovery, my body, and my wellness is going to come first. And I think that is something that it's a conversation that I have often still. It's sort of like, who is driving this car? Because we deserve to drive our own car. We know where we want to go. We really do. So we just kind of like reminding ourselves and getting back in tune with ourselves is one of the things that I think really always helps me to continue on the path of recovery and to be authentic to myself. And then somebody asked about leaving a codependent relationship, which again, I think was incredibly hard and devastating to do, but it was, again, this moment of kind of saying, I love you, but I do love myself, and I love my potential, and I love all the things that I can see for myself more than I love staying where I am, even if that means staying with somebody. And I think codependence is tough because we feel we owe it to people to stick together, to stick by them, even if they're preventing our growth or our forward movement. And I think there comes a time of incredible mourning when you have to kind of say goodbye to a partner, a friendship, a relationship that is holding you back. And I think that's also part of the journey. Like, I don't think there's no avoiding that. And we make it through, and it's painful, and it's a death. And then we come out the other side, stronger, more knowledgeable, and with an incredible experience that shapes us and takes us through. So I think that's a really kind of like big thing in relationships and transition, kind of understanding that you're not going to break from a relationship without any feelings. These relationships have meant everything to us. It's relationships with our families, it's relationships with our friends, lovers, partners. There's no such thing as just like turning away and, kind of like skipping towards something so much better without feeling this huge loss. But it's, I think, understanding that sometimes you got to let go of some weight so that you can get to the next place, and like the weight of the eating disorder, the weight of certain relationships, they weigh us down, they hold us down. And once we can kind of say, you've done this for me, I am who I am, partly because of what has happened to me, but now it's time to move on, I think is also very empowering.
It sounds like for a lot of you, there was this transition through like treatment and recovery that led to kind of a refocusing almost. I won't even say a change, but like a refocusing of values and identity. And like, who am I and who do I want to be and what am I really working towards and what really matters to me? And that with that refocusing, that's where we saw a lot of the changes maybe in relationships and things kind of shifting and noticing that. And I wonder, thinking about how our identities keep changing, how has that been for people to kind of recognize that, okay, I've made this shift and it's probably not the last one I'm going to make. There's probably going to be more shifts and changes in my identity, like when I get married or when I have a child or when I change jobs or when I move again or when whatever it is might happen. How do you all kind of handle knowing that transition and change is a part of the recovery process?
If everybody's okay, I can speak to that. So I think there's a constant reinventing because life is constantly changing, right? Like I went from being a newlywed with an eating disorder, right, to then like the transition through recovery. And just a little parentheses here, I do share with people about my eating disorder because I think that they deserve to know and I deserve the boundaries. I think it's okay to let them know that I have something that at one point or another might require my care and my attention. And it also lets them know that there's a boundary that I might say this is where I'm at, and it establishes something. And I don't think, I've gotten to the place where I'm not ashamed and I'm very open about it. So that's really helpful. But where I was going with the reinventing, we get to know ourselves. I feel we get to a place where we have a really good handle on who we are and where we are in life, and then life totally changes, and then we've got to redefine ourselves as a wife, as a mother, as maybe a divorcee, as maybe we go back to school and now we're a new student. And for me, again, like, it always does come back to, first of all, like, prime wellness, right? It's sort of like, am I nourished? Am I loving myself? Am I accepting myself? And am I offering myself the room to both move forward and maybe make mistakes, not maybe, always make mistakes? Am I allowing myself the room to discover? Because that's really all we're doing, is discovering different facets of life. And so, it's from one new discovery to another, but then always coming back to center to say, I'm going to allow for these changes. I'm going to love myself through them. And, it's okay to kind of shift a little bit, right? We have to, somebody once told me, like, trees are strong and firm and their roots are so deep in the ground, but they will still sway with the wind, because we still, no matter how true and how much we know about ourselves and how true we are to ourselves, we've got to give a little in different situations, and we've got to allow ourselves for that flexibility. So so that's kind of, the reinventing is always happening, and always kind of coming back to, like, is this true to me? Does this feel true to what I want?
I think too that, at least for me, once one goal is completed, I think, oh, I'm good. Like, I came out, check, recovery, check. And then something else happens, or there's a transition, or there's a move. And I just saw that somebody was asking about how, change can be triggering. And it absolutely is for me. I just left a toxic job, and now I don't have a day job, which is it's very hard for me to kind of view myself as unproductive, even though I know that that's okay. It's been very difficult. But what I will say is that each time there's a new change, whether unexpected or whether it is expected, I did, like Gabby mentioned, boundaries. I did want to make sure that I say that boundaries have been really, really important for getting through those moments. Um, and so I definitely let people know that are in my support system, because I might say, they might assume that this is hard, but they don't necessarily know what I'm thinking. Um, and so I really put it out there, and I tell my partner or my friends, I'm like, you know what, this has been a difficult time, and I might need some more support. And I make sure to put things in place for myself too, things that I enjoy, so that I am not just kind of sulking in kind of the anxiety of, like, well, what am I doing next? And reminding myself too that I placed boundaries within my workplace, and they crossed my boundaries, so I had to go. And that was the right decision. I am really confident in my choices. And even though it seems like now it's, not so great, like, and that waiting period is really difficult. I think that's one of the things that I've had to make a priority. And now that I have made my boundaries and self-respect a priority, I'm not going to have a job that, treats me, how I don't want it or shouldn't be treated. And so there are going to be even more times of transition, because it's really hard to find a place that continues to, be somewhere that you want to stay, and somewhere that has a good community. So I didn't realize that after, this checkbox, there was going to be more challenges, more change, and more transition, and it just keeps coming. So now I'm just like, there's no end goal. Like, it's just like, it's just an ongoing thing. And I think, you know, practice does help too. Like boundaries are something that's really hard to practice. But just like Gaby was saying too, like I also let people know that I have an eating disorder, and not every single relationship, because that was another question too. It depends on, you know, every situation is kind of different, but I am pretty open, which helps me in a lot of ways just to kind of take the stigma away and just put it out there. So, you know, I definitely don't add any shame to it at all. And I try to just stay as confident as I can.
I loved Brianna's point about, you know, like recovery isn't like something that you just check off and then life is good afterwards. And I think to answer one of the questions that said, like, if you could define recovery in a sentence or so, I can absolutely define what recovery is not. So when I was in treatment the first few times, I was striving for a life where I didn't have any obstacles and I was happy all the time. And then I took a group, it was called the Happiness Trap, and I realized that happiness is an emotion, not an end goal. Um, what I was striving for was contentment. Um, and uh, contentment is not the same thing as happiness, and no one ever told me that. Um, Happiness is an emotion that rides the curves like all the rest of the emotions. And although it's defined as like one of the good emotions, that's a little more easy to feel for me at least. Um, I have to make room for all the rest of the emotions, and I have to live in a reality where all emotions fit. Um, and so I remember I had a therapist that told me I kept going to therapy every week, and I would look at her and I'd say, "Of course, something else happened, right? Of course this would happen to me." And one day she just was like, "You know, things happen to everyone. You know, it's not just you. It's how you cope with them that really matters. Things will never stop happening." But the way that I can define recovery is that um I'm not taking life, you know, at least for me, I'm not taking life personally. I'm taking what life throws at me and I'm controlling what I can and I'm feeling what I can't. Um, Controlling what I can means being proactive. If life throws something at me, like this week, my car broke down. It's also a week of student testing. I knew it was going to be a rough week, so I meal prepped my meals. I knew it was going to be a rough week, so I told my boyfriend yesterday that I need a little extra love. Um, and I knew it was gonna be a rough week, so I asked ahead of time for my roommate if she could give me a ride to work, and I accepted the fact that I'm gonna need help on my rough days. And yeah, of course, I still felt shame and I felt selfish for taking away other people's time to ask for help, but that's part of recovery. I let myself feel the shame, and then I decided that I was worthy of asking for help. Um, and I think that's the thing that's getting me through this week. Of course, it's overwhelming for me. Recovery is not being happy and skipping around and sunny days. Recovery is being able to have those bad weeks where unexpected things come up and I'm allowed to be stressed about money and school, but it's what I do with that. And it's that I'm still taking my lunches to work every week or every day, not once a week, gosh. Every day I'm still eating them. I'm still coming home and I'm you know, if I can't get everything done, I'm proud of what I could get done and I'm allowed to be upset with what I couldn't get done, but it doesn't stop my week. It doesn't stop me in my tracks and then I dwell on it for the rest of the week and it doesn't become, well, now I'm a failure. It becomes, oh, I'm upset that today didn't go like I wanted it to do too. Um, my victories were that I still got my meals in and that I asked for the support that I needed to make tomorrow a better day. And that's what recovery means to me is being able to have bad days and knowing what to do with them.
Anything others on the panel would add about like what recovery means or how you define it? Yeah.
I want to share something. because it really touched me when Emily like shared what recovery means for her. Because hopefully I can say this, Emily, you tell me if this is fine, but I was lucky enough to share some of the treatment period with you. Um, everyone that is hearing, me and Emily shared a little bit of our recovery together. And right when Emily was sharing like what does recovery mean for her, I just remembered this one time in group where I was just like, I don't even remember what I was complaining about myself, but it was like something like, oh, I'm so, and insert a phrase of negative like way towards me, like I'm so like stupid or I'm so dumb. I don't know, I was just like treating myself that way, like really awful. It was awful. It's awful sometimes, like the ways the way you talk to yourself, like, and when you get mindful of that, it's like, wow, why am I talking myself like that? But anyway, I was saying something like that. And well, for everyone, I have a dog. His name is Sharky, and he's just the love of my life. He's the light of my days. Like I love him so much. So I was just saying something bad about myself, and Emily said, like, do you know how Sharky loves you? Like, doesn't matter you made a mistake. It doesn't matter like you woke up with bad hair. Like, I don't, it doesn't really matter. Just like Sharky loves you how you are. You don't have to change a thing. Even if you made a mistake, he's still gonna love you. And it just impacted me so much because like from now on, I really see recovery for me. Like my goal of recovery is like, I want to see myself through the eyes of Sharky. And for you guys that have pets, you know, like how genuinely, like that love is so pure, and like it's so like it's amazing. It's something that I really want to learn, how to love myself the way my dog loves me. And Emily, I don't know if I told you this before, but just that phrase impacted me so much. Like I think about that probably every day, because I just like whenever I start treating myself in a certain way, like I'm just like treating myself bad, I'm telling myself bad words. For me, recovery means like I want to get to that point where like I talk to myself the way that if Sharky could talk, he would say so many great things about me, how great mom I am. And I'm just like, I want to talk to myself that way. And that's what I'm working towards too.
Yeah,
That's how it's for me.
I always tell people that. I say, you know, if you're ever feeling unworthy, just know that you're loved in the way that you love your dog and in the way that your dog loves you, because your dog can lay on the floor, and this goes for people that struggle with being productive in recovery. You know, your dog can lay on the floor and your dog can get a messed up haircut and your dog can slobber all over the house and your dog can have an upset stomach and accidentally go to the bathroom in the house. But you love your dog because it's your dog. And that's kind of just the purity that I started looking at myself with, just this unconditional, there's a word that I have for it that I can't think of right now, but it's just this pure and oh, I can't remember the word, but it just means like you deserve it no matter what. You're born with it. This love that everybody has, and sometimes you just have to see yourself through someone else's eyes, and sometimes you have to put yourself in someone else's collar or shoes, even though it sounds cheesy. But yeah, just, you know, you'd never say that to your dog. You'd never say, wow, you didn't make enough money today. No, your dog lives in your house rent free. You know, you'd never say to your dog, wow, you know, your new haircut looks terrible. So why would you say that to yourself? You know, your dog would never say that to you either. You come home and they just jump all over you no matter what day you've had or what you look like. They just love you. So that's something I'll always live by.
So
Thinking
get a dog is the
is the takeaway.
that's the takeaway. Everyone should adopt.
Looking at time, I do want to get into more questions that I think are things that a lot of people kind of struggle with during treatment and recovery, is the transition your body goes through and how you all handled that transition your body goes through and continues to go through. Because I think one of the things we don't kind of talk about enough is that, yes, our bodies are going to change during treatment. And our bodies are also designed to continue to change throughout our lives. And we're going to have different experiences that lead to that. So kind of how you all handled those body changes that happened kind of throughout life, in treatment, post-treatment, all of that.
I think that's definitely been one of the hardest things for me, because just like with how I was thinking, oh, end goal recovery, like I didn't realize that there were going to be so many more changes, like even in my 30s and moving forward, and now with getting married and having to like start looking at wedding dresses, which completely terrifies me. But I think what has helped the most with body changing is I do try to continue to acknowledge that I am older than what I kind of saw myself as before, and giving myself a lot more, kind of grace with the changes that have come. And also knowing that recovery hasn't necessarily looked like I thought it was going to. And I'm not, necessarily at the point where I am really happy with where my body's at, but I'm not going to, destroy myself because of that. So I definitely think that it's an ongoing process, and I do continue to talk to my therapist about it. And I just, I never want people to get the impression that, oh yeah, we're all recovered and it's all good now. Like, no, it definitely I definitely don't ever consider myself recovered. I think recovery is always in progress. And again, like with what Emily was saying about, it's really how you are handling those things. Um, with I do try to also talk to other women, because not even just people with eating disorders, but it's definitely, like Erin said, something that's not talked about enough. And I think that for me personally, avoiding it more does make it worse. So I do try to force myself to talk about the issues with body image, and also how I'm trying to get to a more neutral place, because body positivity is also not for everyone either. So I think, that's what works for me.
I can say that I went through a lot of changes from the beginning of recovery until where I am now with my body. When I was anorexic, I wasn't getting a period. I had, I didn't have breasts anymore. Like I was very, my body was different. And with recovery came sort of like becoming a woman again in ways that I didn't really find terribly pleasant. And it was kind of coping with all of that. And that was a big change, but also sort of checking in constantly with where we have been and where we are. I feel that for me personally, it's helpful to know that I abused my body for years. So I have to give it some grace. It's not going to be the same body. As much as I'm so grateful at the resilience of my body, I also need to give it extra care and know that it's been through a lot, and that's okay. And I know that there was a question about pregnancy in there, and that was incredibly hard, just because again, it was the loss of control and all these triggering factors. And it was, again, this sort of like reminder of like, where have I been? Where do I want to go, right? I've been in some really tough places, so I need to give myself that care and that compassion. Where do I want to go is a place of strength and health and wellness. So what does my body need from me right now? And I think it's that sort of like daily checking in. What do I need right now? And, like just even like Emily was saying, the way we are with our dogs and the way we are with people that we love, right? If we take into account that we have put ourselves through hell and that we've abused our bodies a lot, I think we, Nobody looks at an abused dog and is like, I can't believe that dog doesn't have an ear. Like, I don't want it. Like, they've been through a lot, you know. They deserve as much love and care and compassion as anybody, if not more. So we can do that for ourselves and kind of allow ourselves this room to just experience the changes. It's our entire story. Our body will show our age, it will show our struggle, it will show our ups and our downs. And that's almost like, let's wear it proudly. Let's just sort of, it's also amazing to know how much we can take. Again, like I think Emily had said, like, we're in control of nothing, but we're in control of everything. We cannot control anything that happens around us. But once it comes in us, we have the full potential and control to say, I'm going to focus on this part of it or this part of it. And sometimes we fake it till we make it. There's been plenty of times that I have felt so completely uncomfortable, both in my body or in a situation. And I've battled the anxiety that comes with being like, just going to pretend like I'm okay. Just going to pretend like I'm okay. This is fine. This is fine. And then eventually we start to believe it. And we put ourselves in situations that we're like, a couple different times go by and we're like, yeah, I can be here. This is great. I belong. And we slowly start talking to ourselves that way as well. So with all the changes and body changes, I think it's always just grace and love and acceptance, and also some empowerment, of like, this is our story. This is who we are. This is what we've been through. Like, it's amazing what we've done and gone through and where we are. So that's, it's like, own that.
And I know I apologize to those whose questions we didn't get to. I want to wrap up by getting and be respectful of everyone's time because I know we're already 2 minutes over, but just recognizing like the strength it took you all to share this evening. If there was one piece of advice each of you could give to our attendees, or that you kind of use for yourself when you are in those times of transition and change, whether it's known or unknown, what do you kind of do? Because we know transitions are the time when the eating disorder wants to come back in and like find those little cracks and be like, hello, I'm here. So what do you all do, just kind of being aware of that and knowing that and still welcoming the changes and transitions that come? Yeah.
I'm gonna throw it back to my little quote that I used a little while ago, which has been what I've been living by lately: is control what you can and feel what you can't. You can't control it all, but the things that you can control, do what you can. And what you can't control, give yourself grace and feel the feelings that come along with not being able to control things, because that is what recovery is about. It's hard, and it's going to be hard. And if it's hard, do it with tears in your eyes. That's just like how it has to be, and it sucks, but it gets you through. And ask for support.
Who'd be willing to share next?
I definitely think it's been important for me to remind myself that what's happening now isn't going to be forever. So even though the change and transitions are very, aversive for me, like, I have to remind myself that I will eventually find a job, or, this season of this will end. Like, everything also will continue to change, which also means that this situation that I don't like has an ending too. So a lot of times I remind myself, like, I'm going to stick through, because this, insert negative activity or thing that's happening is not going to be forever.
I agree. Yeah, definitely. Some of my life lessons are, this is not forever. This will pass. it's also okay to be here. It's okay to fall. It's okay to skin your knee. It doesn't mean that you have to get up immediately. It's okay to stop for a while and be like, that really hurts. And I don't like this feeling. It's unpleasant. And then recognize, like, just go back to recognizing your strength, right? Like sometimes with the eating disorder, I feel like it can knock on your door. And sometimes it's better to kind of get to know it so well that we can be like, you're here, you're knocking on the door. I totally understand why. And I'm just, hi, you're there. I see you, but I'm going this other path. Like acknowledging that something is there is also really important, because if we pretend that it never existed or that it's never going to come back, we're going to enter this space of kind of like just denial. And so knowing that we've had something that will come back at times and kind of saying it's here, and I'm going to just consciously, I'm going to choose my other option is also kind of my daily motto.
So if I can share like just real quick a piece of advice, it would be like when there is like times of changes or transitions, like it's easy to fall into the thinking trap of like, oh, a change is happening. That means that the worst possible scenario is gonna happen. And I like to remind myself of all the other opportunities in my life where change actually led to something amazing. And just that little exercise of like, maybe you can like write a list, just write down and count them, how many times changes had actually led to something beautiful and amazing. And I'm pretty sure that it's going to be more times than the ones you think like, oh, change is going to be something like awful, it's going to be hard, it's going to be really exhausting. And like, I'm pretty sure that you're going to get to the conclusion that actually change gets nice things too. Like it could have amazing conclusions and amazing outcomes. So that's it.
Thank you, Lola. Thank you all so much for coming on here. I mean, for those who don't know, everyone here was so willing. Like the minute I sent an email being like, hey, we're gonna do this. You guys interested? It was immediately yes. And it really means so much to our alumni to be able to see what recovery can look like and how different it can be, and how it changes and moves over time. And we don't always get to talk about that, especially when we're in treatment. We're in treatment. There's so much recovery after that. So I really value and thank you all so much for coming and speaking tonight. For those who are attending, I'm putting a link in the chat to a survey for tonight's presentation panel discussion, just to fill out, give us a little bit of feedback. I again apologize we weren't able to get to everyone's questions. They were all so good. If I could, I would probably do this for 2 hours, but that might be a lot to ask of our panelists. So with that in mind, I will let everyone go tonight and just thank you guys again so much for this and being willing to share and be vulnerable and create that connection with others, even when you can't see all of them. So thank you all so much, and everyone have a good night. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Everybody.